garden, and it kills me every time I throw something organic into the bin. I'm sure it's good for something in the garden. I have no idea what to do with it. So I'm super excited to hopefully at least get the confidence or a starting point to investigate it a little bit more. Is that kind of what we're going to cover today?
We're going to do composting and earthworm.
Okay.
So basically the end result is compost.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm sure
Okay.
that's what we're after.
Alrighty.
So
Are we going to get the opportunity to taste anything?
You can eat the stuff. Well, that is what you're eating, right? Because the plant's taking it up. Yeah.
Awesome. Over to you. Thanks.
Okay, so this isn't a great example, but this is what we would call soil or earth. And it's made by erosion. So erosion of wind, water, abrasion. That takes rocks and make them into smaller particles. That's soil, okay? And that obviously takes millions of years. That's the crust of the earth. Then on top of that is what we call compost. Well, compost is the decomposition of organic material. So plant matter falling on the ground, and then that's decomposed by microorganisms, and it creates compost. This is actually my husband's. Yeah. So this is compost, and that actually it obviously happens in the environment everywhere. But if you think of a desert, it's very slow. There's very little above ground plant material that falls on the ground. There's very little rain, so you can literally put a stick down and go 2 years later, and you'll see that stick still lying there. So what happens with overgrazing, for example, is that plant roots and that's holding that very thin topsoil that's accumulated over millions of years of these little leaves falling down and then being broken down. There's not enough root matter to hold the soil. So that's overgrazing, and you get the wind blowing it into the sea. So that's millions of years of a process being wasted, right? But you also get urban erosion. So urban erosion is when you have grass and leaves and trees. You take all of that matter once the grass has been cut and the leaves have fallen and you've made your egg. You take those eggshells and you take your pumpkin peels, you put it in a big pile and you throw it at the landfill in Newmansdorp. And there it gets mixed up with all the plastic, and then a big bulldozer puts soil on top of it. So it's an open cycle, what they will call in permaculture. Basically, you're eroding your soil over years. So people who really compost their soils, their garden depth will be like a foot higher than the neighbors, right? So basically, I'm going to show you how to compost. You don't have to throw that stuff away. There's two ways. The one is called hot composting. Hot composting is when you want to make a lot of compost in one go. And what's really nice about it is that you can really make volumes. And what's really cool about it is that it gets so hot that it kills all the unwanted, like weed seeds. You know, like when you have, especially when you get things from the municipality, you know, they cut the grasses on the verges. There's often a lot of weed seeds in there, and if you put that on your veggie batch, you're gonna be creating a lot of work for yourself. So, hot composting, very simple. You need two types of ingredients. The one is brown, okay? That's carbon. So this is leaf matter that's just from underneath my tree at home. We've got a very big fig tree. This is leaf matter. This is like really awesome stuff to make compost with. It decays very quickly. It's got a really nice texture. I feel like I'm baking. Okay. Another nice brown is sawdust. This has gotten wet, but this is actually sawdust. So you can get piles of that for free everywhere, like Aussie's, or there's like a big furniture shop in Newmansdorp. Brown grass, once it's dried, is a nice brown. Okay. So what you want to do is create, this is a miniature version, right? If you're making this at home, you're ideally going to make a cube, square cube.
These are like boxes, the boxes, like
So,
or straight direct off the ground.
You can do, like if you have a planter box, you can make your compost in that box. Right. So you can have a bed, like a vegetable bed. And so it can be, you know, a long line, and then you just pile your layers, and that will decompose. Okay. So generally a layer will be 10 centimeters deep. So that your carbon layer, can add a little bit more. It's like baking, I really feel. Okay. Once you've got your 10 centimeter layer, obviously this is a little bit smaller because we're doing it on a micro scale. Then you add some water, like this. And I mean, if I was doing this on scale, it would be, you know, at the end the pile will be this high. Okay. Then you want a green, it's called green. So green is nitrogen, this is carbon. So it can be any plant material. This, our grenadella was overgrowing our rosemary bush, so I'll harvest some of that. And then another nice green is manure. So it's a nice nitrogen. Usually we don't like chicken manure because it's a little bit strong.
Another green that's available is grass chicken.
Is a very nice green.
That really eats up the...
Yeah, grass cuttings. You just don't want to put too thick a grass cutting layer because then it gets all matted. You've seen it, right? If you leave a bag of grass cuttings, it gets all out. So that's another nice green. And then here, this is coffee grinds. So we're adding some of that.
Stupid question. Does a green not always become a brown?
It does.
Okay.
So, yeah. So green grass is a green and a brown grass is a brown. So you can use both. Then you can add some compost because it's an activator. It's got all these little microorganisms. And basically what they're wanting is something that will activate them. And this is what you're giving them. You're giving them carbon, nitrogen, and water. Then you water this. Just a little sprinkling. Okay, and then you repeat. So then you're going to put another brown on. And you can just use whatever you've got. And what we do is we scavenge. So we drive around town, we pick up everyone's bags of leaves that's going to the dump. That's another brown layer. Okay. Like that. And then another green layer, and you just keep going. So I'm going to add some more horse manure. Okay. They are selling it. I see that those guys, you know, at the bottom of town, by a couple of yours, they are selling bags of horse manure. So you can just go pick up. And this is much cheaper than buying compost from the shop. Much, much. I mean, one little bag is like 30 rand. And you can make it yourself. And this is really, yeah, so this is your coffee grind. Then I'm going to add another green here, which is really nice. It's comfrey. We grow this in the garden. It's a plant that's quite special. It can take nutrients from the soil and make it available to other plants. So this is really nice to use.
What's the name of it?
Comfrey. Knitting bone. Yeah, it's incredible. Like a fire, you know, like once you've made a fire, that stuff can come in here. You know, the ashes. Green grass is really nice. What else, Mike?
Well, the other thing is vegetables.
Oh, yeah. So we've got some, don't we? Shall I add some? Okay. See, we don't do this much at home because we never have material because my husband worms farms. So, but I mean, I've done this in many different ways. The one is, like I say, like you're kind of building like a box structure. And then if you have a planter box, you make your compost in the box. Once it's composted through, you just plant. So I wouldn't plant in this now because what's going to happen is this is going to get hot. It's going to get so hot that you can boil an egg in here. Yeah. So you can stick it.
All the different elements that are
Exactly. So the microorganisms.
You do that on a bigger scale. So, as you said, a piece of cube meter, then it got enough for a critical mass.
Yeah. So the microorganisms are sitting in here. Now you're just giving them the food and the water that they need, and then just go ballistic. And over 2 days, you stick your hand in here, you'll have to pull it out. It's like that hard. You put some eggs in there, and I've seen YouTube videos, it cooks. So we'll just end up with a brown layer. Yes, you can. So say you want to plant a tree. Make a big hole and then do your layers. And you can also, it's very nice for cold composting, I'm going to show you now. Okay. I'm just going to add some sawdust on top here. And you don't want to make the layers too thick because the microorganisms need both. They need the green and the brown, so they need to be touching everything. If you've got a big brown layer and a big green layer, there's not enough surface area. Does that make sense? And then this is your sawdust. And what I've done is at my mom, I made like a 6 meter bed, 6 meter long, 1.2 meters wide, and I just stacked it with this stuff. So it was like this whole tunnel of, and then because the summer season is when you plant your squashes, once it cooled down, we just opened the gap, chucked in some compost, and then planted the seeds in there. And that was enough for that to grow, and then this is still like, and then water. So in 2 days' time, this should be really hot. But like Mike said, this might be a bit small. Also, I haven't added enough water. You can add a bit more, but this is going to be heavy to carry. Then it gets really hot. That's everything's starting to go amazing. Then as it cools down, like maybe in a week's time, what you do is you just turn everything. And then it gets hot again. You'll feel it gets really hot. So this is a very quick way of making compost with lots of quantities, and you're killing weeds. Okay, but most people don't put in the effort to drive around and get all the material that you need to make a big pioneer effort. Although I would recommend it, because you're getting a lot of... Don't squish it. No. Don't squish it. Not much. Eh?
Compost they need air as well. So you wouldn't want to squish.
Yeah, that's why if you're putting in grass, like don't make it compact. Just sprinkle it, brown, sprinkle grass. Grass is amazing for composting. It goes so hot, really. Like that's your layer that you'll feel the most heat. Okay, all right, simple. Anyone can do it. And okay, then the cold composting method. You have something at home. It can be a container that you've made. We've made some with pellets. We've put like a hole in the ground. I want to plant a tree there eventually one day, so there's a hole in the ground. I've got a nasturtium spatch, like kappertjies. So I just chuck things in there because no one can see it because the kappertjies cover everything. Basically, cold composting is, I'm just going to pretend now, you have your vegetable scraps, right? You throw it in your container. Okay, this is today. Then you just cover it with some things. That's it. 2 days later, some vegetable scraps. Throw it in there. Obviously much bigger than this. And then you just cover it with some brown. That's it.
Is this in a container?
Takes much longer. Container. So you can build something with pellets. We have like a cube square pellet thing, and you just chuck it in there and you throw some things in. Chuck in, throw, chuck, throw, chuck, throw. Eventually, over years, it will be full. Because this will all squash down to about this much after it's been composted. Yeah. So cold composting is what we do if there's things that Mike doesn't need for his worms, which is very seldom. So like onion leaves and whatever he doesn't need, I cold compost citrus. Throw it in there, throw some things on top. Throw it in there, throw some, and you can do it in the ground. Just make sure that if there's anything that falls in it, they can get out. That's cold composting. Obviously, you're not going to kill weed seeds. It takes much longer, but eventually you have something that you can use. So we clear out that cold compost pile once a year, and then we just throw it on the veggie beds. Yeah. So one of the really nice things about composting is obviously when someone says to me, my spinach plants are attacked, 95% of the time it's the soil. So spinach is the easiest thing to grow. So nice to just go pick when you have bought it and it starts wilting there and you have to use it. We literally just pick spinach from the garden every time we want to use it. And it will last forever. It lasts like 6 months, one spinach plant. And the only thing it needs is like some good compost. Or worm compost. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Candice, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add. You're actually practicing growing stuff on a bigger scale than we are. And I heard you saying you've got your own compost heaps as well, huh?
Yeah, we've just been experimenting and just mixing whatever goes. I actually, because I've worm farming already, we've got a pile that we just added as we clean out the garden, and then we'll take what's at the bottom and then stir it in with the worm farm bucket. That's as far as we've got, so nothing fancy.
So yeah, I mean, good decomposted compost, like Sue's explained, after a few months is great food for the worms. So I'm happy to steal it and pass it on to my worms. So what I'm going to do, it's a similar concept. In this case, Sue was referring to it as worm compost. The sort of well-known name is vermicompost. That's what it's known as, and it's also very good for the soil. In terms of water retention, nutrients, getting good bacteria and fungi into your soil. So whereas like your fertilizers that you buy, from the shops, they'll feed the plant directly, but they don't feed your soil and make it sustainable. That's what vermicompost will do. So I'm going to do a bit of a demonstration, and maybe you guys can just come and stand and have a look at the little buggers. The idea is just to show you different ways of. This is one example of a worm farm. And then I'm going to show some harvesting ways and also a demonstration of another type of farm you can build. Okay, so this is quite a recent way that I've been doing it. I've experimented with many ways over the years, but I found that using a container like this, this polystyrene is quite lucky because it's so easy to make holes in. You need breathing space over here. There's also holes in the bottom because the water needs to be drained. Although it's got to be moist, it needs to be drained. So basically similar to Sue, where you start building up from the bottom and you keep adding on food for the guys and it slowly fills up. So at this stage, if you look here, the majority of the worms will be in the top half of the container. And when you get to a stage where you want to now maybe make a new worm bin and also get to the good compost that's here at the bottom, then you can sort of make a new bin. Can just come and have a look.
Oh, no way.
Okay. So you can see here there's a lot in the top, and they've obviously been gathering around this chap over here. I think there's some, you'll see wherever you've put in food, but this whole section here is, I was going to get gloves in case I freaked you guys out, but then I never do use gloves. So now I'm making a new worm bin, and there's a different way of doing it. So this is a very easy way to have a first worm bin, is to just get a plant box like this, because it's got drainage holes in the bottom. Yeah. You can see I have put some shade cloth on the bottom so that the worms don't, because the holes in the bottom are quite big, so they'll fall through. So I'll take this top here, lob them in, then I'll just show you sort of what's underneath. You see all the guys here, so it's well populated. And then as you go down, you will see that the stuff's getting more composted and blacker at the bottom here. So I'll take about that much out. I've got a new worm, but now in this section over here, there'll still be hundreds and hundreds of worms in here, but less so than what you got over here. Now there's different ways. You can then just pack some more on here, and the ones that are in will come up. And you keep doing that, and basically you'll be left with lacquer compost at the bottom. But even at this stage, what you can do is like make a hole like this, and I'd go and get some more horse manure, chuck it in the middle, but you must keep it wet. Then all the guys will come to the middle, and you just take out here like once a week into a new bin, until, because remember there's cocoons and everything. Let's see if I can spot a cocoon. Yeah.
They just end up breeding the whole time.
Yeah, like here's a cocoon. So there's normally about 2 or 3 worms that come out of a cocoon. So the more you do it and just put in here and attract them in, the ones that are hatching then are also, and you're getting them all out. Then ultimately you're left with this stuff here. You can see how many worms are still in here though. There's plenty.
Oh.
Okay. So, but if you do this method over 3 weeks, you'll probably get them all out, and then you'll just be left with the compost. And you then dry this out, and I sieve it. And I've got some finished sort of compost here, which you can have a look at. I think it's yeah. So this is the kind of the end product. If you can see, it's very light and fluffy, and it's really good compost. So that's what they call the vermicompost. Okay, and that's from these bins. That's from these bins like this. So, and what I want to show you about this method here is that. Let me take I was going to just add some more food in here. So now you'd want to feed the buggers. They get quite hungry. So there's some veggie scraps.
And that's obviously why they come to the top.
Yeah, that's why they come to the top all the time. Yeah. So the fresher stuff. Look, this is all pretty fresh here in here because I took it off the top here. So I wouldn't really at this stage need to add more. But I want to use this bucket, and I'll show you why. Might as well chuck this in here for these oaks. Okay, so what you can do is the leachate. I don't know if you've heard of worm pea or worm tea. Yeah, okay, so this is a good way of harvesting that. So you just pop this in a bucket, boom, and you keep watering here. And then obviously there's those holes in the bottom here. And then they leak through, and then every week you just take this out, and you normally got about so much in here, and you can just feed that to you can give it a bit of a go.
This week.
Yeah, and you can feed it to your plants. It's a very good liquid fertilizer for your plants, yeah. So that you're not only getting solid compost, but you're getting liquid compost as well.
So
in the bottom.
You could start like that from the beginning.
Yeah, you can start from the beginning. This could be your first. Yeah, this could be your first worm farm. Could be exactly like this. I mean, if you look at the shops, they've got all those layers, and the things go down, and I don't know how much it costs, but this is a simple way just to, and then you just take this out, and you've got your tea in the bottom now. So that's it from me. Sue's the scientist, so I told you she would talk a lot. Actually, me and Sue had our first fight before we were even a couple over a compost pile, because she was working for me, and we wanted to do an experiment at my place on the Crom, building compost heaps and comparing different things. But Sue's a doctor in botany, so she's a scientist. So she had to do everything exactly, like an experiment. And I was just like, nah, let's just gooi. And we've worked out that's a theme in our relationship.
And who was right?
Probably Sue. Yeah. Yeah.
In this bin now, do you have holes at the bottom?
Yeah, I've got holes at the bottom, yeah. So you can put it on...
Can you catch that in this?
No, I'm not catching in the system. So I put these on bricks, and that's just going to waste. This one's specifically designed to catch the worm tea, yeah. What I found about these ones is they retain the moisture very well because they got a lid on them. So if you've got a system like this, you do get evaporation. It dries a little bit, so you just got... Yeah, what I do is I'll get that, if you get that lid behind you, Candice, yeah. So this actually works quite well. The lid for this bucket fits nicely in here. That it basically covers out the light, but there's gaps for the air. So you just get the bucket, the lid, and the thingy, and you've got your system now.
And maybe you can just tell them, if the worms start climbing out of the bucket, why? That's the most common.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, what was that question?
If the worms are starting to leave your bucket, then there's
They're not getting
then yeah, most they're hungry. Yeah. No, it might be other things. Or maybe your mixture of stuff is not quite right. But it's not a science. I mean, there's a wide range of what you can put in here that they'll be happy with. But you might have too much acidic stuff or too much. You know, some people I see they put a lot of vegetable scraps in their thing, and it actually gets too hectic in the bin. So you got to balance the amount of like vegetable scraps you're putting in with the amount of worms that you've got. So I could put a lot in here. I mean, you can see there's a lot of worms, and they'll go through.
Start how long?
How long do they?
When they start seeing the worm?
What do you mean?
You start with worms.
Yes,
You start with like 100, 150 worms, and then they just.
Yeah. So I started off with like 200. I was telling Steph, I think I started off with like 200 worms, and then I just got them from a friend. Yeah, I do sell worms. My business is Mike and the Organics. Yeah. Huh?
And it's a specific worm, it's not just any earthworm.
No, it's red wrigglers. Yeah, these are red wrigglers. So you get different types of composting worms. The nice thing about these guys.
If you leave a vegetable long enough, you'll find the worm there after a while.
Yeah, you're right. If you build your compost heap, you'll see some worms in there that they'll
fast track this process.
Yeah, then it's like I would. Normally, people who buy worms from me normally would buy like 500 or 1,000, and then I think Steph asked how often it grows. So probably doubles every 4 months. So you can, it's exponential obviously if it's doubling. So you can grow your population. I mean, I don't know how many. I've got hundreds of thousands of worms now, and I just started with 200. So yeah. Because they will populate and grow according to the amount of food and the size that they've got. So there's a bit of a balance, because I think you've got to have a decent concentration, because obviously for them to mate. So they can't be too sparsely populated, but then also if there's too much, then they might stop because if there's not enough food. So that's why you just start new bins and let it go. Yeah. Who's got other questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the red regulars versus the earthworms.
Yeah.
Do they both do the same thing, or is it better to use the red regulars?
The red wrigglers and other types of composting worms eat organic matter, where you'll find some earthworms eat actual soil. Sue was talking about the soil. So if you're wanting to
those earthworms have burrows. So they don't live in like.
Yeah. But these guys, if you put them in soil, they won't thrive. These guys want to be in organic matter. So this is all. So that there, the finished product. There's no soil in here. There never was any soil. This is all from organic matter. Yeah.
So for like a complete beginner, your best option would be the first two compost.
No, earthworms, easy.
So it's easy to
Earthworms are.
Hoil stuff.
What you're going to thorn. What you're going to use in here, what you must and mustn't use, so that you don't make any mistakes. So they don't have dairy or meat or anything like that. So they're basically vegan. Yeah. And then there's certain vegetable stuff that you wouldn't put in. So acidic stuff, citrus, onions, garlic, spicy. It's logical. They're not going to dig that. So the pumpkins and all other type of vegetable matter they'll eat. Yeah.
I didn't know. Oh, you do that? Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't like pumpkins. It's like, I've been throwing my pumpkins.
No, they'll eat it. They'll eat anything basically that's been living. But there's those certain spicy things, hot things, acidic things. Yeah, I mean, I've read there that you mustn't give them bread, but if I put bread in here, the guys. In fact, I had a piece of dough in here. Sometimes I feed my worms. Buy them treats on the weekend.
Don't they also like coffee and tea bags and stuff like that?
Yeah, coffee, tea bags. They'll do that. I think I might have some here. But yeah, if you want to take a look, okay, this isn't a very big worm, but this, you can see that slightly enlarged part there. I forget the name, but that's like sort of the sign of a one that's ready for breeding. And they breed. What's it called if you? Hermaphrodite. See, she's the scientist. Yeah. They don't need to find an opposite gender worm to mate with. Yeah.
They also don't have lungs. They're incredible.
They breathe through their skin. Yeah.
They breathe through their
But these are my oaks. Yeah. So I mean, really, yeah. If you, as Sue said, it's the same. Getting rid of your waste and not going into the dump, and then that can just be one purpose. But if you're into gardening, then there's the benefit of the compost.
An NGO in Cape Town called Earth Child, and each classroom has a worm farm. And the kids tend to them, and so you can have them. You can have earthworm indoors.
Yeah.
It shouldn't smell.
No, it doesn't smell. No.
I've also seen kitchens where you cut your vegetables and then it slides open and you chuck everything in your
So
worm
how do you
farm.
feed the plants there? What do you get from here? Just take it straight, or
Yeah, it's not that strong. Remember, it's basically you're putting water in the top. So what's going down is water and nutrients from here. So you can feed it directly, but if you wanted to go further, you can dilute it as well. But yeah, there's no danger of killing the plants if you use it as concentrated as it is. Yeah, it's yeah. So if I was putting stuff in here, what I normally do, we're talking about smelling, is you can see the stuff I put in. I won't put that on the top. I'll normally just dig it in a little bit and cover it there because the top layer is getting a little bit drier. So you want it to moist, and also flies or anything. But obviously in a container that's sealed like this, then you don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
Also eat newspaper.
Yeah. So those kitchen things. So eggshells, eggshells as well. But you must clean them out. But the boxes. So your egg boxes you can put in here. Just put them moist, make them moist, tear them up, put them in here. Your pizza boxes, all cardboard, anything you can put in there. Remember, that's the carbon that you're balancing with the vegetable scraps. So they like that. Yeah. You can get. I don't. Look, we've got lots of horse manure as a basic bedding because we live on the farm. Yeah, so that stuff that I put in here was a mixture of coffee grounds, horse manure, leaves. That's the main sort of bedding that I use. So I'm going to go spend money on buying peat, but I think it is good. Yeah.
You can use newspaper as a bedding also.
Yeah. People sometimes just sit while they're watching.
Brown leaves also work.
Yeah, brown packets, anything paper they will eat. Newspaper you can put in. Some people say the ink, maybe not, but I don't use it, but lots of people do. So it's more than getting just rid of your kitchen organic vegetable scraps. There's other stuff as well you can.
does it need sun? Heat?
No, they don't like light at all. So that's why you'll cover this up, and why there's a lid on here. Yeah, if you take all these worms and you spread them out on the table here, you'll see hundreds of worms, but within 30 seconds you won't see a worm. So they'll go down away from the light. Yeah, and don't put them in a hot compost pile. They don't like too much heat. Okay. All right, guys. Anything else?
How did you start this? Sorry, last question.
I was telling Steph I'd done it years ago. I've always been interested in permaculture, and then when I've started what I've got now, I just got some worms from a friend, and as I said, about 200 worms, and I've just grown the population over that time. Yeah, so I sell worms, I sell compost, but it's just on the weekends, just a hobby, enjoyable hobby. Yeah.
Mike and the Organics.
Mike and the Organics. Yeah. Only the oldies would know that, I think. The band, eh? Mike and the Mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not an oldie.
That's the millennial taste.
Yeah.
Cool, that's nice.
Lekker, yeah. So if you're wanting to get started, then give me a shout. I do supply worms, and I can supply horse manure and everything like that just to get you started. Yeah.
How do we contact you?
So have you got numbers? Yeah, you can get numbers. Yeah.
We'll get it from you and put it on.
Lekker.
So, I mean, this is going on our veggie beds. And it was.
How do you get it so dry? Mine's
Um,
so much more moist.
What I do is, so if I had to take this out the bin, the stuff here at the bottom, then what I do is I've got long trestles, and then I'll lay it out, and then I'll put horse manure next to it, and then they filter into that. But why I'm saying that is I leave it outside to dry a bit. So you do dry it off a bit, and then I sieve it, and then that's what's left.
And do your farms, do you make sure that they're covered from the rain, even
Yeah.
though the water like can't
Yeah.
get in there.
So these
that's-
these are obviously covered with the lids, but I've got other ones. I've got big containers like this, which I've got kind of under wooden trestles that I've built. Yeah, because you mustn't flood them. They can drown basically if they.
Well, then they'll start climbing out.
Yeah, if you get too much water. Yeah. So a lot of the commercial worm farms are indoors. Because you can't have too much rain on them. So yeah, this is quite a good method, obviously,
How
with the lid.
often would you apply this to your garden? Is there too much? Like, can you do overdo
No, you can't. It's not like a strong chemical fertilizer that you're going to
it?
overdo
Okay,
it.
so if you've
Yeah,
got some, just go
The
You
more
can
you put
quite-
in the garden, the more work you're going to have to do by making more.
yeah,
Produce will get cold.
yeah. There's
Well, you
no.
make your veggie garden easier because you don't have pests
That's
as
right.
much.
Yeah.
Or diseases, things like that.
Mm.
So we grow kale, and that's very it's a heavy feeder, so it takes a lot out of the soil. It's one of the plants people struggle a lot with because the soil's poor and the aphids get to them. But in strong soil, they just go. Oh.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Zaka, thank you for listening, guys.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they still going to be around here whilst we're gathering things. So if you guys have any more questions, you're more than welcome to stick around.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
for joining.
guys. Thank you very much. Cheers.